Jerusalem has a lot of history. The old city of Jerusalem is probably the 1 square kilometer with the most history in the world. You can talk there about the Bible, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and so much more. There are so many important things to say that people tend to forget the not important, small, sometimes funny stories from the history of Jerusalem. Stories that are not about God, but about human nature. Stories about jealousy, envy, ego, and sometimes also humanity. And in this video I'm going to share with you some of the not really known stories from the history of Jerusalem. The street that you see behind me was between 1948 till 1967 no man's land. This was the border between Jordan, that had the old city, and Israel, that was behind me. What you see, this hospital here, and this hospital was right on the border, on no man's land. Now, one morning in 1954, one of the sisters that worked in this hospital, Teresa, opened the window, looked towards the old city, and then she coughed, and her dentures, or her false teeth, fell to no man's land. Now, going down to no man's land means basically death, and she wanted back her dentures. So she talked to the head of the hospital. He talked to an Israeli army officer. This Israeli army officer talked to the UN. The UN talked to the Jordanian, and the Jordanian agreed that 3 officers, a Jordanian officer, an Israeli officer, and an officer from the UN will come down here to no man's land and look for the dentures of Teresa. They found the dentures and gave it back to her. Now, an Israeli photographer heard about this story and wanted to take a photo of Teresa and her dentures, but she didn't want to be on the photo. So we asked a different nun to hold the dentures of Teresa, and she agreed, and the picture was published all over the world as Teresa and her teeth. The thing is that if you look closely, you will see that the nun is smiling and she has teeth in her mouth. Today, this hospital is a very special place because it belongs to the church. It runs by the Sisters of St. Joseph, and it is basically a hospice. People that come here basically to die, and although it belongs to the church, they take care here. Also Jews and Muslims come here, so the kitchen here is also kosher and halal. A very unique place in Jerusalem. I'm now standing outside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the most important places in the world. This is where, according to tradition, Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. There are so many things to say about this church that very often I don't get to tell the small, interesting story about the wooden ladder that you can see above me on the facade. Now, this church is very unique because of many reasons. One of them, that it is divided between 6 different denominations. The Catholics have a part, the Orthodox, the Armenian, the Syrian Orthodox, the Coptics, the Christian from Egypt, and the Ethiopians. And the relationship between the 6 different denominations wasn't good, and the arguments got sometimes into violence and even wars when the Russians support the Orthodox and the French and the British supported the Catholics. In 1757, the 6 different denominations signed a status quo agreement, and the status quo agreement says that the way things were then, 250 years ago, this is the way things should stay forever. The symbol for this agreement is the wooden ladder. Until 1831, when Christians wanted to enter the church, they had to pay entrance fee to the Muslims. The monks that lived inside the church didn't want to pay, so they went outside the window, down the ladder, stood on the porch, threw down a rope, and Christians would put food, water in a bucket, and then they would just pull it up, and this way they didn't pay entrance fee to the Muslim. Now, for 180 years, it doesn't cost any money to enter the church. You can enter the church as many times as you want for free. So why is the wooden ladder still up there if they are not using it? Because in the status quo agreement it says that a wooden ladder should be there. So this is why the wooden ladder is there. And when the Pope was here in 1964, he said that this wooden ladder is a symbol to the division in the church. And when the churches will all come together to one church, then this ladder will be removed. Now, I will say that for us it might seem a little bit ridiculous, all these small things, but you have to understand that the 6 different denominations are here for hundreds of years, and they don't want to give 1 inch away to a different denomination. During the very long history of Jerusalem, Jerusalem was conquered and surrendered many, many times. But one of the most interesting and unknown stories took place right over here 100 years ago at the end of World War I. The Ottoman mayor of Jerusalem, Hussein al-Husseini, feared that the holy places in Jerusalem will be destroyed. So he decided to surrender. It was 9th of December 1917, end of World War I. So he took a small delegation and a small flag, and they started walking towards the west, towards the British Army. And as they came here to where I'm standing right now, they met 2 British soldiers and surrendered. What they didn't know is that they surrendered to 2 British cooks that went looking to buy eggs and got lost. Then the delegation met 2 British sergeants and they wanted to surrender, but the sergeant didn't want to accept the letter of surrender, but they did agree to take a photo with the delegation, a photo that became to be very famous. The 2 British soldiers went back to the camp, told their commander that the delegation wanted to surrender. So the commander came here, the delegation was brought here again, and they handed in the letter of surrender and did a small ceremony. This commander went to his commander, to the general, and told him, hey, guess what, Jerusalem just surrendered to me. And so the general said, no, Jerusalem should surrender to me. The Ottoman delegation was brought here again for the 3rd time and did another ceremony. When the big general, General Allenby, heard about it, he canceled the previous ceremonies, and 2 days after that there was the official surrender of Jerusalem at Jaffa Gate at the 11th of December 1917, and Allenby came on his horse to Jaffa Gate, and over there he decided to walk on foot like a simple pilgrim and enter the city, and there was a big ceremony. Now this place right here where the first 3 or 4 surrender ceremonies took place was forgotten, but the British soldiers wanted to have a monument to their friends that died during the battles, and it was decided that here in this place there will be the monument, and they wanted to have here the statue of Allenby. The statue of Allenby was never built, so today there is only the base of this monument, and there are shadows of crusaders, and it says on the monument, near this spot the holy city was surrendered to the 60th London Division, 9th of December 1917, erected by their comrades to those officers, NCOs, and men who fell in fighting for Jerusalem. Jerusalem has a lot of things, a lot of history, a lot of archaeology, many palaces and temples were here. But one thing that Jerusalem never had and probably will never have is a port. And Jaffa, 60 kilometers away, was always the port city of Jerusalem, and this is why the road right here was always called Jaffa Road, and the gate behind me was called Jaffa Gate. But until the British came here at the end of World War I, streets had no name in Israel. Only when the British came here, they started giving names to roads and streets, and they asked an Armenian family to do the street signs. And in those signs, they first wrote the English, then the Arabic, and then the Hebrew name. When the city was Jordanian between 1948 and 1967, the Jordanian wrote only the name first in Arabic and then underneath in English. And only after the Six-Day War, Israel added the Hebrew name on top of the Arabic name. You can know who rules the city by whose language is at the top. I came here to the Tower of David Museum to tell a nice story about King Herod, but then I saw this statue right over here, and it reminded me of another small unknown story. When Jerusalem celebrated her 3,000-year birthday, the city of Firenze wanted to give it as a present a small replica of the famous statue of David that was made by Michelangelo, but there was a problem. King David there is naked, and you cannot show King David naked in Jerusalem. So instead they gave this small replica of another statue of King David, not as nice and not as famous. Right next to Jaffa Gate, there is this citadel where I'm standing right now. The name of this place is the Tower of David, and there is of course no connection to King David. It was built 1,000 years after King David by King Herod that built here a citadel in this very strategic place. King Herod built here 3 towers. One of the towers was named after Miriam, his beloved wife. Now, he loved her deeply, but he also thought that she's not loyal to him and will try to bring back her family, the Hashmonite dynasty, to rule the land of Israel. So he murdered her, but because he loved her so much, the Talmud tells us that he kept her body in a bath of honey. And like many tour guides like to say, King Herod brought a new meaning to the phrase, "Hi honey, I'm home." Now, this place used as a stronghold for 2,000 years. And the British were the first one to turn this place into a museum, and it is a great museum about the history of Jerusalem. And every evening there is a light show that is very recommended. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please help me grow my channel and subscribe. If you have any questions, then please write them down here below. Now, if you come to Jerusalem and you want to know also the important stories of the city, then you can always purchase my Jerusalem booklet in English or in German as an ebook or the hard copy. I will leave the link below. See you in the next video, and bye for now.